Martha Sawyer's hands were still shaking when she buried the ledger beneath her petticoats. Behind her, her sister Catherine lay dead on the parlor floor, and Martha knew exactly who'd put her there. She had 20 minutes before Reed Montgomery returned, 20 minutes to become a killer in everyone's eyes, or a corpse in her own right. She chose the stagecoach. She chose to run. And 3 days later, when outlaws surrounded that coach in the middle of nowhere, she wondered if she'd made the worst mistake of her life. Before we begin, please subscribe to this channel and stay until the very end of this story. Comment below what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these tales travel. Now let's begin. The shotgun blast shattered the afternoon silence. Martha hit the stagecoach floor before her mind caught up with her body. Glass rained down from the window above her head. The driver was shouting something, cursing, maybe praying, and then came the second shot, and he wasn't shouting anymore. "Everyone out! Hands where I can see them!" Martha's fingers found the leather satchel beneath the seat. The ledger. Reed's ledger. The one thing that could prove she hadn't killed Catherine. The one thing that could hang Reed Montgomery for what he'd really done to Catherine, to those girls in St. Louis, to God knew how many others. The stagecoach door flew open. A man with a red bandana and dead eyes grabbed the merchant beside her and threw him into the dust. Martha clutched the satchel tighter. "You too, lady, move!" She moved. The sun hit her like a physical blow after the dimness of the coach. 3 men, all armed, all watching her with the particular interest men gave to women traveling alone. The merchant was face down in the dirt. The other passenger, an older woman from Topeka, was crying silently, her lips moving in prayer. "Well now," said the one with the red bandana, looking Martha up and down, "what have we got here?" Martha kept her eyes down. She'd learned that in Kansas City, in Reed's house. Never look directly at dangerous men. Never give them a reason to notice you more than they already have. "Check the luggage," Red Bandana ordered Sid. "Take anything worth taking." Martha's heart hammered against her ribs. The ledger was in the satchel. The satchel was still in her hands. If they looked, if they opened it, that bag. One of the others pointed at her. "Hand it over." "Please," Martha heard herself say. "It's just clothes, personal things, nothing valuable." "Then you won't mind me looking." He grabbed for it. Martha pulled back without thinking. His face hardened. "You want to keep your teeth, lady. Let her keep the bag, Chet." Red Bandana was still watching her, but differently now, calculating. "Take the money box, we're not thieves." Chet laughed at that, mean and sharp. "Could have fooled me." But he let go. Martha stumbled backward, clutching the satchel so hard her knuckles went white. Red Bandana tipped his hat to her, actually tipped his hat, and then they were gone. 3 riders disappearing into the rocks with the strongbox and everything else they could carry. The driver was dead, shot through the chest, still holding the reins. The merchant wouldn't look at the body. The woman from Topeka had stopped praying and started keening, a high, awful sound that made Martha's skin crawl. "We need to keep moving," Martha said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "We can't stay here." "The driver's dead." The merchant's voice shook. "How are we supposed to? Can you drive a team?" "No." "Then we walk." Martha looked at the road ahead, mountains in the distance. Silver Bend was supposed to be another day's ride, on foot in the heat with no water. "We walk or we die here." They walked. By sunset, the woman from Topeka was sobbing with every step. The merchant had stopped talking entirely, just trudged forward with his coat over his head against the sun. Martha's feet were bleeding inside her shoes. The satchel felt like it weighed 100 pounds, but she kept walking, because Reed was behind her somewhere. Reed with his charm and his money and his absolute certainty that no one would ever believe a seamstress over a respected businessman. Reed who'd strangled Catherine when she'd threatened to expose him, then looked Martha dead in the eye and said, "You tell anyone, they'll hang you for it. Who do you think they'll believe?" She'd believed him. That was the worst part. She'd stood there in her sister's house, Catherine's body still warm on the floor, and she'd believed every word. Would have kept quiet, would have let him get away with it, if she hadn't found the ledger in his study. Names, dates, amounts, girls as young as 14 sold to houses in St. Louis and Chicago and San Francisco. Catherine's name was in there too. She'd been gathering evidence. That's why Reed killed her. Martha had taken the ledger and run straight to the stagecoach office, bought a ticket with the last money she had, and ran. "I see lights." The merchant's voice cracked with relief. "Up ahead, that's got to be Silver Bend." It was, a scatter of buildings in the valley below, lamplight starting to glow in windows. They reached the edge of town just as full dark fell. Martha's legs were shaking. Her throat was so dry she could barely swallow. "Thank God," the woman from Topeka whispered. "Oh, thank God." But Martha didn't feel thankful. She felt hunted. Because Silver Bend was just another place Reed could find her, just another place she'd have to hide. The main street was wider than she'd expected, flanked by wooden buildings that looked more permanent than frontier towns usually managed. A saloon, a general store, a restaurant with Mountain View Café painted on the window. A few people on the boardwalk stopped to stare at them. "You folks look like you've had a time of it." The voice came from a tall woman in a practical brown dress, standing in the doorway of the café. She had dark hair going gray at the temples and sharp, assessing eyes. "What happened?" "Robbery." The merchant's voice cracked. "They killed our driver. We walked. Come inside." The woman didn't wait for them to agree, just turned and held the door open. "Sarah, get water, and find Doc Harrison." The inside of the cafe was clean and warm, with checkered curtains and sturdy tables. Martha sank into the nearest chair before her legs could give out. Someone pressed a cup of water into her hands. She drank it so fast, she choked. "Easy now." The tall woman, Sarah, maybe rubbed her back. "Slow sips. When's the last time you ate?" Martha couldn't remember. Yesterday, the day before time had gotten strange after Catherine died. "I'll make soup." The woman who'd called them inside was already moving toward the kitchen. "Eleanor, sit with them. They're in shock." Eleanor was the younger one, Martha realized. Pretty in a worried sort of way, with her hand on Martha's shoulder, like she was afraid Martha might fall over. She probably would, given half a chance. The soup came fast, beef and vegetables, hot enough to burn. Martha didn't care. She ate like she was starving because she was. Across the table, the merchant and the woman from Topeka did the same. "I'm Grace Chen." The tall woman sat down across from Martha. "I own this place. You got names?" "Martha." She didn't give her last name. Didn't know if word had spread yet about Catherine's death, about her disappearance. "Martha. Smith." Grace's eyes flickered. She knew it was a lie, but all she said was, "You need a place to stay, Martha Smith. I need work." The words came out before Martha could think them through. "I can sew, cook a little, clean, anything. Can you cook more than a little?" Martha met her eyes. "I can learn fast." Something passed between them, some understanding that Martha didn't fully grasp but felt bone deep. Grace nodded slowly. "I need help in the kitchen. My last cook left 2 weeks ago. The work's hard and the hours are long, but it's honest and the pay's fair. Room comes with it. There's an attic space above the restaurant. It's not much. I'll take it. Don't you want to know what it pays?" Martha looked down at her empty bowl, at her bleeding hands still clutching the satchel, at the dirt ground so deep into her dress she'd never get it out. "Doesn't matter," she said quietly. "I'll take it." Grace studied her for a long moment, then she nodded. "You can start tomorrow. For tonight, you need rest." Eleanor, show her up to the attic. The attic was reached by a narrow staircase at the back of the building. Eleanor led the way with a lantern, her skirts swishing in the close darkness. "It's not much," she warned, echoing Grace's words. "It leaks when it rains. The winter's cold, but it's private and it's safe." Safe. The words settled over Martha like a blanket. When had she last felt safe? The attic was exactly what Eleanor had promised, not much. A narrow room under slanted eaves with a cot, a washstand, and a single small window looking out over the back alley. But it had a door with a lock. There's a chamber pot under the bed. Eleanor set the lantern on the washstand. Privy's out back if you need it. Grace usually starts cooking around 5 in the morning, but she said to let you sleep tomorrow.
Start when you're ready. Thank you.
Martha's voice came out rough.
I mean it. Thank you.
Eleanor smiled, and for the first time Martha noticed how tired she looked. How careful. We look after each other here, Eleanor said softly. Women, I mean. It's not always easy being alone in a place like this, but we manage. You'll see. She left. Martha stood in the middle of her new room, her room hers, and slowly set the satchel down on the cot. Her hands were still shaking. Everything was shaking now that she'd stopped moving. She'd made it. Kansas City to Silver Bend, carrying proof of Reed's crimes, and she'd made it. The relief hit her like a wave. She sat down hard on the cot and pressed her hands over her mouth, trying not to make a sound as she cried. Not from sadness, from the sheer, overwhelming weight of survival. When she could breathe again, she pulled out the ledger, leather-bound, unremarkable. She opened it to a random page, and Catherine's handwriting looked back at her. Neat columns of names and dates, notes in the margins. Verify with Monsieur Sinclair. Follow up St. Louis connection. Reed present at 3 deliveries. Catherine had been so careful, so thorough, and Reed had killed her anyway. Martha closed the ledger and slid it under the thin mattress. Tomorrow she'd find a better hiding place. Tonight she just needed to sleep, to close her eyes without expecting to open them in a jail cell or worse. She was taking off her shoes, completely ruined, when she heard it. Footsteps on the stairs, heavy ones, a man's tread. Martha's heart jumped into her throat. She grabbed the only weapon she had, the candlestick from the washstand, and backed toward the window. The footsteps stopped outside her door. Miss Smith, a man's voice low and gravelly. Grace sent me up, said the roof over your bed leaks. I'm here to fix it before the next rain. Martha didn't answer, didn't move. A pause, then, I'll just leave the supplies out here. You can let me know when you're ready to have it looked at. No rush. The footsteps retreated. Martha waited, barely breathing, until she heard him reach the bottom of the stairs. Then she crept to the door and opened it a crack. There was a bucket on the landing, some tools, a canvas tarp neatly folded, and a note written in rough but careful letters. Sorry to startle you. I'm Ethan Westlake. I do repairs around town. Grace said you might be nervous about strangers. I'll come back tomorrow when there's daylight, and you can see I'm not dangerous. E.W. Martha picked up the note, read it twice. Then she pulled the supplies inside, locked the door, and spread the tarp over the suspicious-looking stain on the ceiling above her cot. In the darkness, she could still smell the dust from the road, still feel the weight of Red Bandana's eyes on her, still hear Catherine's last words, whispered 3 days ago before Reed came home. I'm going to stop him, Martha. I'm going to make sure he never hurts another girl. Martha closed her eyes. I'll finish it, she whispered to the darkness, to Catherine's memory. I promise, I'll finish what you started. Outside her window, Silver Bend settled into night. Somewhere in that darkness was Ethan Westlake, the man who'd left her supplies, and a kind note. Somewhere was Grace Chen, who'd given her work without asking questions. Somewhere was Eleanor, who'd said, women look after each other here. And somewhere, maybe, was the chance for Martha to be more than Reed Montgomery's victim, more than a woman running scared. Somewhere in Silver Bend there might be the chance to fight back. Morning came too fast and too bright. Martha woke to the sound of pots clanging in the kitchen below and Grace's voice calling orders to someone. Her body ached in places she didn't know could ache. The thin mattress hadn't helped. She dressed in the same clothes, she had nothing else, and tried to make herself presentable with the water in the washstand. Her reflection in the small mirror was unfamiliar, hollow-eyed, haunted. She looked away. The kitchen was chaos. Grace moved through it like a general commanding troops, stirring 3 pots at once while Eleanor chopped vegetables with practiced efficiency. They both looked up when Martha appeared in the doorway. "You're up?" Grace wiped her hands on her apron. "Good. Eleanor, show her where everything is. Martha, you'll start with breakfast prep. Can you make biscuits?" "Yes." "Then make biscuits. We've got miners coming in at 6, and they eat like locusts. Move." Martha moved. The work was familiar. Her mother had taught her to cook before she'd taught her to sew. Her hands remembered the rhythm of kneading dough even when her mind was elsewhere. Flour, water, salt, lard, press and fold, press and fold. "You've done this before," Eleanor sounded approving. "Grace said you were a seamstress." "My mother was a cook." The lie came easily. Everything was a lie now. "I learned from her." The miners came like Grace had predicted, a flood of men in dusty clothes, loud and hungry. Martha stayed in the kitchen away from their eyes and kept the biscuits coming. By the time the rush ended, her arms ached and her face was flushed from the heat of the stove. "Not bad." Grace surveyed the empty serving platters with satisfaction. "You'll do. Take a break. Eat something. Lunch prep starts in an hour." Martha took her biscuit and coffee out to the back step, where the morning air was cool and clean. She was halfway through eating when she noticed the man. He was tall, built like someone who'd spent his life doing hard labor. Dark hair, dark eyes, a face that looked like it rarely smiled. He was fixing the hitching post in front of the general store, his movements efficient and precise. As Martha watched, he paused, straightened, and looked directly at her. Their eyes met, held. Martha felt a jolt go through her, not fear exactly, something else. Recognition maybe, like seeing your own wariness reflected back at you. He nodded once, then went back to work. "That's Ethan." Eleanor had appeared beside her with her own coffee. "Ethan Westlake. He left you the supplies last night. He's a carpenter. He's whatever needs doing, builds, repairs, helps out. He's quiet, keeps to himself mostly." Eleanor's voice went softer. "He's good people, though. Grace trusts him, and Grace doesn't trust easy." Martha watched him work. There was something deliberate about the way he moved. Careful, like a man who'd learned not to make mistakes. "Why did he leave me the note?" she asked. Eleanor looked at her, really looked, in a way that made Martha want to fidget. "Because Grace told him you'd had a scare," Eleanor said quietly. "That you might not take kindly to strange men showing up at your door. Ethan understands that. He's known women who've had reasons to be afraid." There was a story there. Martha could hear it in the way Eleanor's voice changed, but she didn't ask. She had enough stories of her own. "When's he going to fix the roof?" "Whenever you tell Grace you're ready for him to. No rush, like he said." Eleanor drained her coffee. "Come on, lunch won't make itself." The day passed in a blur of work. Martha's hands stayed busy, chopping, stirring, serving, cleaning. It was good. Work meant she didn't have to think, didn't have to remember Catherine's face, or the sound of her sister's voice, or the weight of the ledger hidden under her mattress. By the time evening came, she was exhausted. Grace sent her upstairs with a plate of leftover stew and orders to rest. "You did good today," Grace said, and something in her eyes was almost kind. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be just as hard." Martha climbed the stairs to her attic room, her legs heavy as lead. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and froze. Someone had been there. Nothing was moved. Nothing was disturbed, but she could feel it. The air was different. The space felt occupied. Her eyes went to the cot, to the mattress where the ledger was hidden. She lunged for it, yanking the mattress aside with shaking hands. The ledger was still there, still safe. But there was something else now, a folded piece of paper tucked beside it. Martha picked it up with numb fingers, unfolded it. The handwriting was different from Ethan's note. Elegant, educated. "You're not the first woman to come to Silver Bend running from something. You won't be the last. We help each other here. When you're ready to trust us, we'll be ready to help you. S.W. S.W. Martha's mind raced. Not Grace, her last name was Chen. Not Eleanor, she hadn't given a last name. Who else knew she was here? Who else had access to her room? And more importantly, how much did they know? Martha's hands were shaking again. She crumpled the note and threw it in the cold stove, watched it catch and burn. Then she pulled the ledger out and stared at it, this cursed book that was both her salvation and her damnation. Someone in Silver Bend knew she was hiding something. Someone had been in her room, had seen where she kept her secrets, and had left her a message that was both welcome and warning. We help each other here, but help came with a price. It always did. And Martha didn't know if she could afford to pay it. She slid the ledger back under the mattress. She'd find a better hiding place tomorrow and lay down fully clothed, too tired to care about comfort. Through the thin walls, she could hear Silver Bend settling into night. Voices from the saloon, a dog barking, somewhere a woman singing, and underneath it all the quiet, persistent whisper of her own fear. You're not safe yet. You'll never be safe. Reed is coming. He's always coming. Martha closed her eyes and tried not to believe it, but in the darkness, Catherine's face looked back at her, and Martha knew safety was a lie she couldn't afford anymore. The only question was what she was going to do about it. 3 days passed before Martha found the courage to ask Grace about the note. 3 days of cooking, cleaning, keeping her head down, and her secrets close. 3 days of watching Ethan Westlake work across the street, fixing things that seemed perfectly fine to Martha's eyes, always careful never to come too close. On the 4th morning, Grace cornered her in the kitchen during the lull between breakfast and lunch. You planning to sleep under that leaky roof forever, or are you going to let Ethan fix it before winter comes? Martha's hands stilled on the potato she was peeling. I can manage. That's not what I asked. Grace leaned against the counter, arms crossed. He's not going to hurt you if that's what you're worried about. I'm not worried. You're terrified. I can see it every time a man walks through that door. Grace's voice wasn't unkind, just matter of fact. Whatever you're running from, it's eating you alive. And I'm not going to push. But Ethan's good people, Martha. He's safe. Martha set down the potato. Her hands were shaking. They were always shaking now. Someone came into my room, she said quietly. Left me a note, signed S.W. Grace's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. What did it say? That I'm not the first woman to come here running, that you help each other. We do. Who's S.W.? Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then she moved to the kitchen door, checked that Eleanor was busy with customers, and turned back to Martha. Sophia Whitmore, she said low enough that only Martha could hear. She's the dressmaker, lives above her shop on 3rd Street. And yes, she has a key to this building. I gave it to her. Why? Because 3 years ago, a woman showed up here with 2 black eyes and a broken wrist. Her husband had done it. Said she'd burned his supper. She was scared to stay at the hotel, scared he'd find her, so I gave her the attic room. Grace's jaw tightened. Her husband showed up 2 days later, would have dragged her back if Sophia and Eleanor and I hadn't stood between them. We got her on the next stage out. She's in San Francisco now, safe, happy last I heard. Martha's throat felt tight. And Sophia checks on new women to see if they need help. Sophia recognizes the signs. Same as I do, same as Eleanor does. Grace met her eyes steadily. We're not asking for your story, Martha, but if you need help, we're offering it. No strings, no judgment. I don't need help. Everyone needs help sometimes. Martha looked away. Through the kitchen window, she could see Ethan across the street now, working on the boardwalk in front of the saloon. As she watched, a drunk stumbled out and nearly fell on top of him. Ethan caught the man, steadied him, said something that made the drunk laugh. Then Ethan stepped back, careful to keep distance between them. Why does he keep his distance? Martha asked. From me, from everyone. Grace followed her gaze. Because Ethan knows what it's like to be afraid, and he knows how to make people feel safe. That's all you need to know about him. But Martha wanted to know more, needed to maybe, because the way Ethan moved, the way he held himself, she recognized it. The wariness, the constant awareness of exits and threats. She'd been moving the same way since Catherine died. Tell him he can fix the roof, Martha said. Tomorrow morning before the cafe opens. I'll be there. Grace nodded, satisfied. Good. Now finish those potatoes. The lunch crowd's coming. The lunch crowd came and went. Martha worked until her arms ached and her feet throbbed until the familiar rhythm of chopping and stirring and serving pushed Catherine's face back to the edges of her mind. It was only when she was climbing the stairs that night, bone-tired and ready to collapse, that she noticed the woman standing in the alley below her window. Martha froze. The woman was young, maybe 20, with blonde hair coming loose from its pins. She was crying, trying not to, Martha could tell, but failing. And there was something about the way she held her left arm close to her body that made Martha's stomach turn. The woman looked up. Their eyes met. The woman's face crumpled. Please, she whispered. Please, I need help. Martha should have closed the window. Should have pretended she hadn't heard. Every instinct Reed had beaten into her screamed to stay hidden, stay safe, don't get involved. But she thought of Catherine who'd gotten involved. Catherine who'd died trying to help girls just like this one. Stay there, Martha called down softly. I'm coming. She took the back stairs 2 at a time, her exhaustion forgotten. The woman was still in the alley, looking around frantically like she expected someone to appear any second. Come inside. Martha grabbed her uninjured arm and pulled her toward the cafe's back door. Quickly! Grace was still in the kitchen cleaning up. She took one look at the woman and her expression hardened. Eleanor, she called. Lock the front door, now! Eleanor appeared, saw the woman, and moved without questions. The locks clicked home. Grace turned to the woman. Who did this to you? My husband. The words came out broken. Tom Baker. He said if I left again, he'd kill me. He means it. He's done it before, not to me, but to his first wife. Everyone says she ran off, but I found her dress in the barn all torn and bloody, and when I asked him about it, She broke off sobbing. Sit down. Grace's voice was gentle now. Let me see your arm. The woman sat. Grace examined her arm with practiced efficiency, her face grim. It's broken. You need Doc Harrison. No, Tom knows Doc Harrison. He'll tell Tom where I am. Doc Harrison doesn't tell Tom Baker anything, Grace said firmly. Eleanor, get the doc. Tell him it's urgent and to come quiet. Eleanor vanished out the back door. Martha stood frozen, watching Grace work. This was organized, practiced. How many women had they done this for? What's your name? Grace asked the woman. Annie Baker. All right, Annie, you're safe here. We're going to take care of you. You don't understand. Annie's voice rose, panicked. Tom's crazy. He'll burn this place down if he finds out you're helping me. He'll hurt all of you. He can try. Grace's voice was steel. Martha, go upstairs. Get blankets. She's shaking. Martha ran upstairs, grabbed every blanket she had, and came back down to find Doc Harrison already there. A gray-haired man with kind eyes and gentle hands. He was examining Annie's arm while Grace held her steady. Definitely broken, he said quietly. I'll need to set it. This is going to hurt. Annie bit down on the leather strap Grace gave her. The sound she made when Doc Harrison set the bone would haunt Martha for days. But when it was over, Annie's arm was splinted and wrapped, and some of the fear had left her eyes. She needs rest, Doc Harrison said, closing his bag. Somewhere safe where Tom Baker can't find her. The orphanage, Grace said immediately. Eleanor Wyatt runs it. She's got room and it's outside town. Tom won't think to look there. I'll take her. Eleanor had returned slightly out of breath. My wagon's out back. Tom will be looking for her by morning, Doc Harrison warned. He'll be violent. Let him look. Grace's voice was cold. He won't find her. They moved fast after that. Eleanor wrapped Annie in a cloak, hiding her splinted arm. Doc Harrison went out first, checking that the street was clear. Then Eleanor and Annie disappeared into the darkness, the wagon wheels creaking softly. Grace locked the back door and leaned against it, her face suddenly tired. This is what you do, Martha said. It wasn't a question. This is what we do. Grace met her eyes. Women helping women. It's not legal. It's probably not even right by some people's standards, but it's necessary. The orphanage is safe. Safe enough. Eleanor's husband left her the property before he died. It's in her name. Tom Baker has no claim on it. Grace pushed away from the door. Get some sleep, Martha. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. Martha climbed the stairs slowly, her mind spinning. Women helping women. A network of safety in a town that looked rough and lawless on the surface. Grace, Eleanor, Sophia, Doc Harrison. How many others? And where did that leave her? She was running too, hiding too. Did they know? Did they guess? She reached her door and stopped. There was a shadow on the landing, someone sitting on the top step. Don't scream, Ethan Westlake's voice came out of the darkness. It's just me. Martha's heart was hammering. What are you doing here? Grace sent me. Said Tom Baker might come looking for his wife tonight, and she wanted someone watching the building. He stood up, and in the dim light from the street, Martha could see his face. Serious, worried. I'll be outside. Just wanted you to know so you didn't shoot me if you heard something. I don't have a gun. You should get one. He said it matter-of-factly, like suggesting she buy bread. Grace has extras. She'll teach you. Martha stared at him. This man she'd never spoken to, who was offering to stand guard over her, over all of them. Why do you help them? She asked. Grace and Eleanor and the others, why do you care? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. Because nobody helped my sister when she needed it. Nobody stood up for her, and now she's gone. He turned toward the stairs. I won't let that happen to anyone else, not if I can help it. He was halfway down before Martha found her voice. Ethan. He stopped. Thank you. He didn't answer, just kept walking, but Martha heard the back door open and close, heard his footsteps settle on the back porch, standing guard. She went into her room, locked the door, and lay down fully clothed again. Sleep felt impossible. Every sound made her jump. Was that Tom Baker? Was that Reed somehow tracked her across 300 miles? But as the hours passed and nothing happened, exhaustion won. Martha's eyes closed, and for the first time since Catherine died, she dreamed of something other than blood and ledgers and running. She dreamed of standing in a circle of women, their hands linked, facing down something dark and terrible. And in the dream, she wasn't afraid. She was angry. Tom Baker showed up at dawn. Martha woke to the sound of shouting in the street below. She ran to the window and saw him, a big man, red-faced and furious, standing in front of the café. I know she's in there, he bellowed. Send out my wife. Grace appeared on the boardwalk, arms crossed, completely unafraid. Your wife isn't here, Tom. Go home. You're lying. Someone saw her come this way last night. Tom took a step forward. I've got rights. She's my property. She's not property. She's a person. Grace didn't move. And she's not here. Then you won't mind if I search the place? Yes, I will mind. This is private property. You have no right. Tom's face went purple. I've got every right. That's my wife. Was your wife. Doc Harrison had appeared from somewhere, flanked by two minors. Martha recognized from the café. Past tense. She's filed for divorce, Tom. Sheriff Davis has the papers. That was a lie. It had to be a lie. Annie couldn't have filed anything. She'd barely been able to stand last night, but Tom didn't know that. She can't divorce me. She can, and she has. Doc Harrison's voice was calm, implacable. It's over, Tom. Go home. This is your doing. Tom rounded on Grace. You and your meddling bitches turning wives against their husbands. Well, I won't stand for it. He lunged for Grace. Martha's heart stopped. But before Tom could reach her, Ethan stepped out of the alley and caught Tom's arm in a grip that made the bigger man yelp. That's enough. Ethan's voice was quiet, but there was something dangerous in it. The lady said no. Time for you to leave. Get your hands off me. Ethan didn't let go. Are you leaving, or do I need to help you? For a moment, Martha thought Tom would fight. His face was murderous, his free hand curling into a fist. But something in Ethan's eyes made him think better of it. He jerked his arm free and stumbled backward. This isn't over, he snarled. You hear me? This isn't over." He stalked off down the street, still shouting threats. Grace let out a long breath. "Thank you, Ethan." Ethan nodded. Then his eyes found Martha in the window above. He held her gaze for a moment, and Martha saw something in his expression, not pity, understanding. The cafe was tense all morning. Customers whispered about Tom Baker's outburst. Some looked at Grace with disgust, others with quiet approval. Martha kept her head down and worked, but her hands were shaking again. At midday, a woman came through the door that made everyone stop talking. She was elegant in a way that seemed impossible for a frontier town, perfectly fitted dress, dark hair swept up in an intricate style, carrying herself like she owned the world. "Sophia," Grace said, and there was relief in her voice. Sophia Whitmore, SW, the woman who'd left the note. Sophia's eyes swept the cafe and landed on Martha. She smiled, warm, genuine, and walked straight to the kitchen. "You must be Martha. Grace has told me about you." She had a slight accent, European maybe. "I'm Sophia Whitmore. I run the dress shop." Martha wiped her flour-covered hands on her apron. "I know, you left me a note." "I did. I hope I didn't frighten you." "You did." Sophia laughed at that, bright and unashamed. "Good. A woman alone should be frightened. It means you're smart." She glanced at Grace. "I heard about Tom Baker. Annie's safe. At the orphanage. Eleanor's with her." "Good." Sophia turned back to Martha. "I came to offer you work, if you're interested." Martha blinked. "Work, but I have work here. Grace tells me you're a seamstress. I need help in my shop. The work's not steady, but it pays well when it comes in. You could do both, cook here in the morning, sew for me in the afternoons." Sophia's smile widened. "Unless you prefer to stay covered in flour all day." Martha looked at Grace. Grace shrugged. "Your choice. I can manage the afternoon cooking myself if you want to take Sophia's offer." It felt like a test, like they were offering her something more than just work, a way deeper into their circle, into whatever network they'd built here. "All right," Martha said slowly. "I'll try it." "Excellent." Sophia clapped her hands together. "Come by tomorrow afternoon. I'll show you what needs doing. And Martha," her voice dropped, "thank you for helping Annie last night. Grace told me you didn't hesitate. I just opened a door." "You did more than that. You saw someone who needed help, and you helped. That's not as common as you'd think." Sophia touched her arm briefly. "I think you'll fit in well here." After she left, Martha turned to Grace. "What is this really, this network of yours?" Grace was quiet for a moment, her hands still in the dishwater. "5 years ago, a girl came through Silver Bend," she said finally. 13 years old, traveling alone, said her stepfather had been inappropriate. She was running. Grace's voice went hard. "I gave her food and a place to sleep. Next morning a man showed up claiming to be her father, wanted to take her back. I believed him. I sent her away with him." Martha's stomach dropped. "What happened?" "He wasn't her father. He was a procurer, works for wealthy men back east, finding girls for their entertainments." Grace's hands clenched in the water. "By the time I found out she was gone, shipped to San Francisco, we never saw her again." "Grace, I made a promise that day. Never again would I turn away a woman or a girl who needed help. Never again would I trust the wrong people." Grace finally looked at Martha. "So Eleanor and I started watching, started helping. Sophia joined us, then Doc Harrison, then Ethan after what happened to his sister. Now there's maybe a dozen of us in town who'll stand up when it matters." "What happened to Ethan's sister?" Grace shook her head. "That's his story to tell, not mine, but it's why he's here, why he helps." Martha absorbed this slowly. A network built on tragedy, on women who'd been failed by the law, by society, by men who thought ownership gave them rights. "I want to help," she said. "Whatever you're doing, I want to be part of it." Grace studied her. "You sure this isn't safe work, Martha? Tom Baker threatened to burn down this cafe. He's not the first to make threats. won't be the last. I'm sure. Why, you've been here less than a week. You don't owe us anything." Martha thought of Catherine, of the ledger hidden under her mattress, of all the names written there, girls who'd needed help and gotten none. "Because someone should have helped my sister," she said quietly, "and nobody did. So now I will, for someone else's sister." Grace smiled, then small but real. "All right, welcome to the cause, Martha Smith." That night, Martha lay in her newly repaired attic room. Ethan had fixed the roof that morning while she was at Sophia's shop, and thought about what she'd stepped into. Not just a job, not just a town, a rebellion, quiet, careful, invisible to anyone who wasn't looking. Women helping women in a world that told them they were property. They were building something else. Something that said no. That said, we protect our own. Martha pulled out the ledger, read through Catherine's careful notes. All these names, all these girls Reed had sold, traded, shipped away like cargo.
I'll stop him,
she whispered to the darkness. I'll stop all of them. But as she said it, she realized something that made her breath catch. She couldn't stop Reed alone. She'd been thinking like a fugitive, hide, survive, stay invisible. But that wasn't enough. To really stop him, to make sure he never hurt anyone else, she needed help. She needed Grace's network, Sophia's connections, Ethan's quiet strength, Eleanor's safe house. She needed to stop running and start fighting. The question was whether she could trust them with the truth, whether revealing her real name, her real story, Reed's crimes, whether that would bring them together or put them all in danger. Martha closed the ledger and slid it back under the mattress. Tomorrow she'd go to Sophia's shop, learn what she could about this network, figure out who these people really were and whether they could help her finish what Catherine had started. Outside her window, Silver Bend was dark and quiet. But somewhere out there, Martha knew women were still suffering, still being hurt, traded, sold. And now Martha had found people who actually cared, who actually fought back. For the first time since Catherine died, Martha felt something other than fear. She felt hope. Hope lasted exactly 4 days before it shattered. Martha was in Sophia's shop hemming a dress for the banker's wife when the man walked past the window. She wouldn't have noticed him except for the way he moved, slow, deliberate, scanning every building like he was memorizing the town. He had a forgery artist's hands, she thought. Long fingers, careful movements. Then he turned, and she saw his face. Red bandana was gone, but she recognized him immediately. The outlaw who'd robbed their stagecoach. The one who'd looked at her with those dead eyes and let her keep her satchel. Martha's needle slipped and stabbed into her thumb. Blood welled up bright against the white fabric. "Careful!" Sophia rushed over with a cloth. "Are you all right?" Martha couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The man was still there, still looking, and any second now he'd glance through this window and see her and remember. He moved on, disappeared around the corner toward the saloon. "Martha." Sophia's voice was sharp with concern. "What's wrong? You've gone white as sheet." "That man," Martha's voice came out strangled. "The one who just passed? I know him." Sophia went very still. "Know him? How?" "He robbed our stagecoach, killed the driver. He's—" Martha's hands were shaking so badly she dropped the dress. "I need to tell Grace. I need to warn—" "No." Sophia grabbed her arm. "Don't run out there in a panic. If he's dangerous, you drawing attention to yourself is the worst thing you could do." She pulled Martha away from the window into the back room of the shop. "Sit, breathe, tell me everything." So Martha told her. About the ambush, about Red Bandana's dead eyes, about how he'd let her keep the satchel for reasons she still didn't understand. About the 3 days walking through the desert afterward, half expecting him to circle back and finish what he'd started. Sophia listened without interrupting, her face growing grimmer with every word. "You're sure it's the same man?" "Positive." "Did he see you just now?" "I don't think so." Sophia was quiet for a long moment thinking. Then she stood and locked the shop door, flipped the sign to closed. "Stay here, don't go near the windows. I'm going to find Grace and Ethan." She paused at the door. Martha, is there anything else you need to tell me? Anything about why you're really here? This was it. The moment Martha had been dreading and preparing for. She could keep lying, could keep pretending to be Martha Smith seamstress running from nothing more dangerous than bad luck, or she could trust them. My real name is Martha Sawyer, she said quietly. My sister was Catherine Montgomery. Her husband Reed strangled her 3 weeks ago and made it look like I did it. I ran because I have evidence, a ledger proving Reed's been trafficking girls for years. Catherine was trying to stop him. That's why he killed her. Sophia's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, maybe, or vindication like she'd suspected all along. Where's the ledger now? Hidden in my room. Good, keep it hidden. Sophia unlocked the door. I'll be back soon. Stay quiet and stay out of sight. She left. Martha sat in the back room of the dress shop, surrounded by bolts of fabric and half-finished gowns, and tried not to think about Red Bandana's hands on her satchel, about how easily he could have looked inside, about whether he'd connected the frightened woman on the stagecoach with the cook at the Mountain View Café. 20 minutes passed, then 30. Martha's nerves were screaming by the time she heard the back door open. It's us, Grace's voice. Come on out. Martha emerged to find Grace, Sophia, and Ethan crowded into the front room. Ethan was carrying something wrapped in cloth. When he set it on the counter and pulled back the fabric, Martha saw a revolver. You know how to use one of these? Ethan asked. No. You're going to learn. He picked up the gun, checked it with practiced efficiency, and handed it to her grip first. This is a Colt 45. 6 shots. It's heavy, so use both hands. Point at what you want to hit and squeeze the trigger slowly. Don't jerk it. Martha took the gun. It was heavier than she'd expected, cold and solid in her hands. The man from the stagecoach, Grace said. We found him. He's staying at the hotel, registered under the name James Crawford. Told the clerk he's a land surveyor here to map mineral deposits. That's a lie, Martha said. He's an outlaw. Maybe, or maybe he's both. Sophia was watching Martha carefully. The question is what he's really doing here. Silver Bend's not exactly on the main road. People don't just wander through by accident. Ethan spoke up, his voice quiet but certain. He's looking for something, or someone. The words hung in the air. Martha felt them settle over her like a shroud. You think he's looking for me? I think it's possible, Ethan said. You said he let you keep your bag. What if he realized later what might be in it? What if someone hired him to find you? Reed. The name blazed through Martha's mind like fire. Reed, with his money and his connections, hiring men to track her down and retrieve his ledger. I need to leave. Martha set the gun down with shaking hands. If he's here for me, I'm putting all of you in danger. I should go before... Before what? Grace's voice was hard. Before he catches you alone on the road, before Reed Montgomery finds you in some other town with no one to protect you. She stepped closer. Sophia told us everything about your sister, about the ledger, about what you've been carrying. You should have told us sooner, Sophia said, but there was no anger in her voice, just a kind of sad understanding. We could have helped. I didn't know if I could trust you. And now... Ethan was still watching her with those dark, careful eyes. Martha looked at them. Grace, who'd given her work without questions. Sophia, who'd offered her friendship. Ethan, who'd stood guard over her in the darkness. These people who'd built a network of safety for women who had nowhere else to turn. Now I trust you, she said, but that doesn't mean I should stay. If Reed sent that man, then we deal with him. Grace's voice was flat. Final. We don't abandon our own Martha, and you're one of ours now, whether you planned it or not. Something cracked open in Martha's chest. She'd been alone for so long. Even before Catherine died, she'd been alone, isolated in Reed's house, watching her sister slowly realize the monster she'd married. And after Catherine died, running had become her entire existence. No friends, no allies, just survival. But these people were offering her something else. Not just safety, but solidarity, a chance to fight instead of flee. "What do we do?" she asked. Ethan picked up the gun and handed it back to her. "First you learn to shoot. Then we find out what James Crawford really wants. And then—" He paused. "Then we stop him." They left through the back door, walking quickly, but not running. Grace returned to the café. Sophia locked up her shop. Ethan led Martha out of town toward the hills where the sound of gunfire wouldn't draw attention. They didn't speak until they were well away from any buildings. Then Ethan set up a row of bottles on a fallen log and turned to her. "Show me how you hold it." Martha raised the gun. Ethan immediately stepped behind her, his hands covering hers, adjusting her grip. Both thumbs forward. "Lock your elbows, but don't stiffen up. Line up the sights front and rear, make them level. Breathe out and squeeze." The gun kicked harder than Martha expected. The shot went wide, missing the bottles entirely. Again, they practiced until Martha's arms ached and her ears rang despite the cloth Ethan had given her to muffle the sound. By the time the light started failing, she could hit the bottles more often than not. It wasn't good, but it was something. "Keep it with you," Ethan said as they walked back. "Loaded. Don't hesitate if you need to use it." "Have you ever killed anyone?" The question came out before Martha could stop it. Ethan was quiet for a long time, then, "Yes. Because of your sister. Because of what happened after my sister." He didn't elaborate. Martha didn't push. They reached the edge of town just as full dark fell. Ethan stopped at the corner where their paths would split. "Martha," his voice was rough, "what you did running with that ledger, that took courage. Don't doubt that now." "I don't feel courageous. I feel terrified." "Good. Means you're smart enough to know the danger." He started to turn away, then stopped. "My sister's name was Sarah. She was 16 when Frank Blackwood took her." Martha's breath caught. "Took her?" "Kidnapped 3 years ago. Blackwood runs a ranch outside town, big operation, lots of money, well connected. But that's not all he does. He traffics women, sells them to wealthy men back east or to brothels in San Francisco, just like your brother-in-law." Ethan's hands clenched at his sides. "Sarah went missing on her way home from school. I searched for months. Found nothing. No trace, no leads, nothing. It's like she vanished into smoke. You think she's still alive? I don't know. Sometimes I hope she is. Sometimes I hope she's not, because at least then she wouldn't be suffering." His voice cracked slightly. "That's why I help Grace and the others. That's why I'm helping you. Because maybe if enough of us stand up to men like Blackwood and Reed Montgomery, maybe someday Sarah will find her way home." Martha reached out and touched his arm. Ethan flinched but didn't pull away. "We'll find her," Martha said. "I promise you we'll find her." "You can't promise that." "I can promise I'll try. And I can promise that Reed Montgomery will answer for what he's done." Martha's voice hardened. "Catherine died gathering evidence against him. I'm not letting that evidence stay hidden." Ethan studied her face in the darkness, then he nodded slowly. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we start asking questions about James Crawford. Find out what he wants and who sent him." He disappeared into the shadows. Martha made her way back to the café, the weight of the gun strange and solid in her pocket. The building was dark. Grace had already closed for the night. Martha let herself in through the back door and climbed the stairs to her attic room. She was reaching for her door when she heard it. Footsteps inside her room. Martha froze. Her hand went to the gun. She pulled it out, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. The footsteps stopped. Then the door opened. James Crawford stood in her doorway holding her satchel, holding the ledger. "Miss Sawyer," his voice was calm, almost pleasant. "We need to talk." Martha raised the gun. Her hands were shaking, but her voice came out steady. "Put it down. Easy now." Crawford held up one hand, the other still gripping the satchel. "I'm not here to hurt you. You killed our driver. You robbed us." "I did, and I apologize for the necessity, but circumstances have changed." He gestured at the ledger. "Do you have any idea what's in this book?" I know exactly what's in it. Then you know it's worth killing for, worth dying for. Crawford took a step toward her. Martha thumbed back the hammer on the revolver. The click was loud in the small room. Crawford stopped. Reed Montgomery wants this book very badly. He's offering $5,000 to whoever brings it back. Along with you, preferably alive, but dead, will do. Martha's stomach dropped. $5,000. That was more money than most men in Silver Bend would see in 10 years. Crawford could live like a king on that reward. So that's why you're here, for the money. That's why I was hired to come here, but like I said, circumstances have changed. Crawford very slowly set the satchel down. I saw what Montgomery did to your sister. I was there in Kansas City when he gave the order. I watched him strangle her and then calmly sit down to dinner like nothing happened. Martha's vision blurred. Hearing it, confirmed hearing that Reed had murdered Catherine with his own hands, it made something inside her crack. Why should I believe you? Because I have a daughter. Crawford's voice went quiet. 15 years old. Her mother died last year. And when I saw what Montgomery did, when I read what's in this ledger, all those girls, some younger than my Lucy, I realized I can't take his money. I won't. He met her eyes. I came here to tell you that Reed Montgomery is coming. He's already on his way. He'll be here within the week. The room spun. Martha kept the gun pointed at Crawford's chest, but she felt like she might collapse. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to decide what you're going to do. Run again or stay and fight. If you run, he'll keep chasing. He'll never stop. Men like Montgomery don't forgive, and they don't forget. Crawford picked up the satchel again slowly and held it out to her. But if you stay and fight, you might actually have a chance. This ledger, it's evidence. Real evidence. Names, dates, transactions. If you can get it to the right people, you can destroy him. Martha lowered the gun slightly. Her mind was racing. Reed was coming. She had less than a week. What do you get out of this? Why help me? Nothing. I get nothing. Crawford set the satchel on her bed. Except maybe I sleep a little better knowing I didn't help a child killer collect his evidence back. That's all. He moved toward the door. Martha stepped aside, still keeping the gun trained on him. One more thing, Crawford said from the doorway. The man Montgomery's traveling with, his name is Garrett. Big fellow, mean as a snake, fast with a gun. He's killed before and he'll kill again without blinking. You need to be ready for him. Why are you really doing this? Martha asked again. The truth. Crawford was quiet for a moment. Because my Lucy asked me why I take jobs finding people. I told her it's honest work tracking down criminals and fugitives. She asked me how I know they're really criminals, how I know the people hiring me aren't lying. He smiled sadly. I didn't have a good answer for her, so I'm finding one now. This is me finding one. He left. Martha stood frozen in her doorway, gun still raised, until she heard his footsteps fade down the stairs and out the back door. Then she stumbled into her room, locked the door, and slid down against it. Reed was coming, within a week, with a killer named Garrett, and Martha had to decide whether to run again or make her stand here in Silver Bend with people she barely knew but somehow trusted more than anyone she'd known back in Kansas City. She pulled the ledger out of the satchel with shaking hands. Catherine's handwriting looked back at her, page after page of careful documentation, evidence that could hang Reed Montgomery, evidence that could save the girls whose names filled these pages, but only if Martha was brave enough to use it. She thought of Grace standing up to Tom Baker without flinching, of Sophia building a network to protect women who had nowhere else to go, of Eleanor opening her home to strangers who needed shelter, of Ethan still searching for his sister after 3 years of nothing. These people fought. They didn't run. They stood their ground and protected their own, even when it was dangerous, even when it was terrifying. Could Martha do the same? She pressed her forehead against the ledger, Catherine's words blurring beneath her tears. Tell me what to do, she whispered, timid. Tell me what you'd want me to do. But Catherine was gone. The only voice Martha could hear was her own, and it was saying the same thing over and over: fight. Stay, fight. Martha wiped her eyes and stood up. She had less than a week to prepare, less than a week to turn Silver Bend into a fortress or a trap, less than a week to decide if she was going to be a victim or a survivor. She looked at the gun Ethan had given her, at the ledger Catherine had died protecting, at the small room that had become the first place she'd felt safe in months. Then she made her decision. She wasn't running anymore. The next morning, Martha called a meeting. Grace, Sophia, Eleanor, Ethan, Doc Harrison, and 3 other people Martha hadn't met before, 2 minors named Jack and Samuel, and a woman named Alice who ran the general store. They gathered in Grace's kitchen after the breakfast rush, crowded around the table, all watching Martha with varying degrees of curiosity and concern. Martha told them everything about Catherine's investigation into Reed, about the ledger and what it contained, about Crawford's warning and Reed's imminent arrival, and about her decision to stay and use the evidence to destroy Reed once and for all. When she finished, the kitchen was silent. Then Alice spoke up, her voice sharp. "You brought a killer to our town. You put all of us in danger." "I did," Martha said, "and I'm sorry, but he was coming eventually. Reed Montgomery doesn't leave loose ends. If I'd run, he would have tracked me somewhere else and hurt someone else. At least here I have help. At least here we can prepare." "Prepare how?" Samuel asked. "You're talking about taking on a wealthy man from Kansas City, a man who can hire guns and lawyers. What chance do we have?" "We have evidence," Martha said. She pulled out the ledger and set it on the table. "Every girl he trafficked, every transaction, every accomplice. It's all here in Catherine's handwriting. If we can get this to the right authorities—" "Authorities won't care," Jack interrupted. "Rich men like Montgomery buy their way out of everything. You think some Kansas City judge is going to prosecute one of his own based on a dead woman's diary? Maybe not in Kansas City, but there are federal marshals, anti-trafficking laws. If we can get this to them—" "That's a big if," Alice said. "And meanwhile, Montgomery's coming here with hired killers. Even if we survive that, what's to stop him from bribing his way out later?" Martha felt her hope crumbling. They were right. She'd been so focused on having evidence that she hadn't thought past that. What good was proof if no one would listen? "Then we make them listen." Ethan's voice cut through the doubt. Everyone turned to look at him. "We make enough noise that they can't ignore it. We don't just hand over the ledger quietly. We make sure everyone knows what's in it. Newspapers, telegraph operators, other towns. We spread the word so wide that Montgomery can't bribe or threaten his way out." "That's dangerous," Eleanor said quietly. "That puts all of us at risk." "We're already at risk," Sophia countered. "We've been at risk since we started helping women escape their abusers. This is just bigger, more visible." She looked at Martha, "but also more important. If we can actually stop a trafficking ring instead of just saving one woman at a time." "It could change everything," Grace finished. She was staring at the ledger like it was both a weapon and a salvation. "It could give us the power to actually prosecute these men instead of just hiding their victims." The room fell silent again. Martha could see them all thinking, weighing the danger against the possibility. Finally, Doc Harrison cleared his throat. "I'm in," he said. "I'm old and I'm tired, and I've seen too many women hurt by men who face no consequences. If there's a chance to change that, I'll take it." "I'm in too," Grace said. "This is what we've been building toward, whether we knew it or not." One by one, they agreed. Even Alice, even the miners who had the most to lose. By the time they finished, they had a plan. Rough, dangerous, probably insane, but a plan. They would fortify the café and Sophia's shop, set up watch rotations, get word to the federal marshal in Denver, copy Catherine's ledger and send versions to newspapers in 3 different territories. create a network of witnesses who could testify to what Reed had done. And when Reed Montgomery arrived in Silver Bend with his hired gun, Garrett, they would be ready. They would make him answer for Catherine, for Sarah, for every girl whose name was written in that ledger. They would make him pay. Martha looked around the table at these people who'd become her allies, her friends, her family in the space of 2 weeks. People who were willing to risk everything for a woman they barely knew and a cause that might get them killed. "Thank you," she said, and her voice cracked. "Thank you for believing me, for believing in this." Ethan met her eyes across the table. "We're not doing this just for you. We're doing it for all of us, for everyone who's been hurt by men like Montgomery and Blackwood. This is our fight now." And Martha realized he was right. This wasn't just about her anymore. It wasn't even just about Catherine. It was about every woman who'd ever been told she was property, every girl who'd been sold like cargo, every victim who'd been ignored because her abuser had money or power or friends in the right places. This was about standing up and saying no more. Reed Montgomery was coming within a week, and Silver Bend would be waiting. The preparations took 3 days. 3 days of Martha barely sleeping, jumping at every sound, teaching herself to load the revolver in the dark. 3 days of Ethan and the miners reinforcing doors and windows. 3 days of Grace stockpiling food and water like they were preparing for a siege. 3 days of Sophia copying the ledger by candlelight, her hand cramping around the pen but never stopping. On the 4th day, James Crawford came back. Martha was in the café kitchen when Grace called her name, urgency sharp in her voice. Crawford stood in the dining room, hat in hand, looking exhausted. "He's here," Crawford said without preamble. "Montgomery arrived an hour ago, checked into the hotel with Garrett and 2 others I don't recognize. They're armed and they're asking questions." Martha's stomach dropped. "What kind of questions?" "About you. Showing people a photograph saying you're his sister-in-law, that you're disturbed in the mind, that he's here to bring you home for your own safety." Crawford's mouth tightened. The hotel clerk believed him. So did the man at the telegraph office. Montgomery's good at this. By tomorrow, half the town will think he's a concerned family member, and you're a mad woman. Then we need to move faster. Ethan had appeared from the back room, his face grim. "The copies, are they ready?" "2 finished," Sophia said, emerging from the kitchen. "I'm starting the 3rd tonight." "That'll have to be enough." Ethan turned to Crawford. "Can you get them to the marshal in Denver?" "I can try, but Montgomery's watching the roads. If he sees me leave, then we create a distraction." This came from Eleanor, who'd arrived sometime during the conversation. Her face was pale but determined. "Annie's husband Tom has been causing trouble again. If we let word slip that Annie's at my orphanage, Tom will make a scene. Montgomery and his men will be drawn to the chaos. Crawford can slip out during the confusion." "That puts you at risk," Martha protested. "Tom Baker's dangerous. So is Reed Montgomery. At least with Tom, we know what we're dealing with." Eleanor's voice was steady. "Besides, I have 12 children at that orphanage. I'm not letting a trafficker operate anywhere near them. If this is how I can help stop him, I will." Grace was already moving, pulling out paper and pen. "I'll send word to the sheriff. Tell him there might be trouble at the orphanage, that Tom's been making threats. He'll need to be there officially. That gives us witnesses if anything goes wrong." "What about Montgomery?" Martha asked. Her hands were shaking again. She pressed them flat against the table. "What do we do when he comes for me? We don't let him take you." Ethan's voice was flat, final. Simple as that. But nothing about this was simple. Martha could see it in everyone's faces, the fear they were trying to hide, the knowledge that they were betting everything on a plan that could fall apart in a dozen different ways. They were ordinary people, going up against a man with money and power and absolutely no conscience. The odds weren't good. Crawford cleared his throat. "There's something else you should know. I overheard Montgomery talking to Garrett. They're not just here for the ledger. Montgomery wants to make an example of you, Miss Sawyer. He's planning to take you back to Kansas City, put you on trial for your sister's murder, and hang you publicly. He wants everyone to see what happens to women who cross him." The room went cold. Martha felt the blood drain from her face. "Over my dead body," Grace said, her voice like iron. "He's not touching her. He might have to go through all our dead bodies." Alice spoke up from the doorway. She'd brought Jack and Samuel with her, all three carrying rifles. Word spreading about what Montgomery is, about what he's done. People are choosing sides. "What sides?" Sophia asked carefully. "Who's with us?" Alice's face was grim. "Maybe a third of the town. The rest either don't believe it or don't care. Some think you're stirring up trouble over nothing. Others think Montgomery's story about Martha being disturbed sounds reasonable enough." She paused. "And some are on his payroll now. He's been flashing money around, buying drinks, making friends. Smart man knows how to win people over." "So we're outnumbered," Samuel said flatly. "We're not trying to win a war," Ethan countered. "We're trying to survive long enough to get that evidence to someone who can use it. Once the marshal has the ledger, once the newspapers print the story, Montgomery loses his power. He becomes just another criminal." "If we survive that long," Jack muttered, "we will." Martha was surprised to hear her own voice, strong and clear. Everyone turned to look at her. "We will survive because we have something Montgomery doesn't. We have the truth. We have each other, and we have nothing left to lose." That wasn't quite accurate. They all had plenty to lose. But Martha saw understanding dawn in their eyes anyway. They'd all chosen this fight knowing the cost. Grace, who'd lost that 13-year-old girl. Eleanor, who'd watched her husband die and rebuilt her life from scratch. Ethan, still searching for his lost sister. Sophia, who carried her own scars from men who thought they owned her. They were all survivors. And survivors knew how to fight. The plan went into motion that evening. Eleanor drove her wagon back to the orphanage in full view of the hotel where Montgomery was staying. Grace made sure the word spread through the café Annie Baker was at the orphanage. Tom had found out there was going to be trouble. Tom took the bait faster than they expected. By sunset, he was drunk and raging, gathering his friends for a ride out to Eleanor's property. The sheriff, warned by Grace, assembled a group to follow and keep the peace. And in the chaos of people choosing sides and taking positions, James Crawford slipped out of town on a fast horse, carrying 2 copies of Catherine's ledger wrapped in oilcloth. Martha watched from her attic window as the torches gathered and moved toward the edge of town. Her heart was hammering. If this went wrong, Eleanor could be hurt. The children could be hurt, all because Martha had brought her war to Silver Bend. Second thoughts. Ethan had climbed the stairs silently. He stood in her doorway, not entering without permission. "Constant thoughts," Martha admitted. "This is my fault. If I hadn't come here, then Montgomery would still be trafficking girls. Your sister would still be dead and unavenged. And we'd all still be fighting our small battles without knowing there was a bigger war to win." Ethan leaned against the doorframe. "You didn't bring the fight to Silver Bend, Martha. You just made us see it was already here." "Frank Blackwood," Martha said, understanding. "You think Montgomery and Blackwood are connected." "I know they are. I've been tracking Blackwood for 3 years trying to find Sarah. Every lead goes cold, but the pattern's always the same. Girls disappear from small towns, show up in cities back east or in California. Someone's organizing it, someone with reach and resources." Ethan's hands clenched. "Your sister's ledger might be the link I've been missing. If Montgomery and Blackwood are working together, then we can bring them both down." Martha's voice hardened. "We can find Sarah. Maybe, if we survive the next few days." Ethan straightened. "Montgomery knows you're here. He's probably figured out you have allies. He'll move soon before Crawford can reach the marshal. You need to be ready." "I am ready." Martha touched the gun in her pocket. "Ethan, if something happens to me, if Montgomery takes me, promise me you'll get that ledger to the authorities anyway. Don't let it die with me. Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me." Ethan held her gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded. I promise, but you're going to be fine. We're all going to be fine. He left. Martha didn't believe him, but she appreciated the lie. The attack came at midnight. Martha was dozing in a chair, fully dressed, gun in her lap, when the sound of breaking glass jerked her awake. She grabbed the revolver and ran to the window. Below, dark figures were moving around the café. She counted 4, no 5. One was smashing in the front door. Martha ran for the stairs, her heart in her throat. Grace's room was on the ground floor right off the kitchen. If those men got to her, she was halfway down when she heard Grace's voice, loud and angry. Get out of my establishment. Then a gunshot. Martha's blood turned to ice. She took the rest of the stairs at a run and burst into the cafe dining room. Grace stood behind the counter, her own rifle smoking. One of the intruders was on the floor, clutching his leg and screaming. The other 4 had frozen, clearly not expecting resistance. I said get out, Grace repeated, working the rifle's action. Another bullet clicked into place. Montgomery sent us for the Sawyer woman, one of the men said. He was trying to sound tough, but Martha could hear the fear underneath. Hand her over and we'll leave peaceful. She's not here. You're lying. Then search the place, but the first man who tries gets what he got. Grace nodded at the bleeding man on the floor. Martha should have stayed hidden, should have let Grace handle it, but something in her snapped some last thread of fear or caution or self-preservation. She stepped into the doorway, gun raised. I'm right here, she said. You want me, come take me. All 5 men turned. Martha saw their faces hard. Men hired guns, the kind who'd kill for money and sleep just fine afterward. The bleeding one she didn't recognize. The others, her breath caught. One of them was Garrett. She knew it instantly from Crawford's description. Big, cold-eyed, with a gun already in his hand. There you are, Garrett said, almost pleasantly. Mr. Montgomery will be pleased. He's been very anxious to see you, Miss Sawyer. I'm not going anywhere with you. I don't think you have a choice. Garrett raised his gun. You can come alive and mostly unharmed, or you can come dead. I get paid either way. You touch her and this whole town comes down on you, Grace said. Her rifle was still trained on the men. We sent for the sheriff. He's on his way back from the orphanage right now. Then I guess we better move fast. Garrett took a step toward Martha. The front window exploded inward. Ethan came through in a shower of glass, hitting the ground, rolling, coming up with both guns drawn. Behind him, Jack and Samuel burst through the broken door, rifles ready. Step away from her, Ethan said quietly. Both his guns were pointed at Garrett's head. For a moment, nobody moved. The cafe was frozen in violence, guns drawn, fingers on triggers, everyone waiting for someone to make the first move. Then Garrett smiled. Reed Montgomery offers $5,000 for Martha Sawyer, alive or dead. You really want to die protecting her? We really do, Ethan said. Question is, do you want to die collecting that money? Garrett's smile faded. He looked at his men, one bleeding the others, suddenly very aware they were outnumbered. His finger tightened on the trigger. Martha didn't think. She just fired. The gun kicked in her hand, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Her shot went wide, missing Garrett by inches, but it was enough to break the standoff. Garrett dove for cover. His men scattered, chamarred. Grace fired, Jack fired. The cafe erupted into chaos. Martha dropped behind the counter as bullets tore through the walls. Glass shattered, wood splintered. Someone was screaming. She couldn't tell who was shooting at whom anymore. All she could do was keep her head down and try not to die. Then Ethan was beside her, grabbing her arm. Back door now. They ran through the kitchen, Grace right behind them. Behind them, the shooting continued, Jack and Samuel holding off Montgomery's men, buying them time. They burst out into the alley and ran straight into another ambush. Reed Montgomery stood blocking their path, a pistol in his hand. He looked exactly as Martha remembered, handsome, well-dressed, completely calm, like he was attending a dinner party instead of a gunfight. "Hello, Martha," he said pleasantly. Did you really think you could run from me forever? Martha raised her gun. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold it. I have your ledger, she said. Catherine's evidence. Copies are already on the way to the federal marshal. I know. Crawford was kind enough to tell me before I had Garrett shoot him. Reed's smile widened at Martha's gasp of horror. Don't worry, he's not dead, just wounded enough to be persuaded. He told me everything, your little network, your plans, all of it. Very admirable, really, but ultimately futile. The marshal still has the evidence. Evidence that will mysteriously disappear before reaching any courtroom. I have friends, Martha, powerful friends. This little crusade of yours has been entertaining, but it's over now. Reed took a step closer. I'm willing to be merciful. Come with me quietly. Tell everyone you were confused, that your grief over Catherine made you unstable, and I'll make sure your friends here aren't charged with harboring a fugitive. Go to hell, Martha said. I was hoping you'd say that. Reed raised his gun. Ethan moved faster than Martha thought possible. He slammed into her, knocking her aside as Reed fired. The bullet meant for Martha's chest caught Ethan in the shoulder instead. He went down hard, blood blooming across his shirt. Grace fired. Reed dove behind a stack of crates. Martha lunged for Ethan, her hands finding the wound. Pressure had to apply pressure. Go! Ethan gasped. Martha, run. Get to the orphanage. Find Eleanor. I'm not leaving you. You have to. Ethan shoved something into her hand, a piece of paper creased and worn. That's where Blackwood takes them, where he keeps them. I've known for months, but I couldn't prove it couldn't get close. But if Montgomery and Blackwood are working together, if you can get there... He broke off coughing. Blood flecked his lips. Martha's vision blurred with tears. Ethan, please. Find Sarah, he whispered. Promise me. Find my sister. More gunfire erupted from the café. Shouts breaking glass, the thunder of horses. Martha heard Sheriff Davis's voice yelling orders. The whole town was waking up, choosing sides, joining the fight. Grace grabbed Martha's arm. He's right. You need to go. Take my horse. Ride for the orphanage. Eleanor will know what to do. I can't just... Yes, you can. This is bigger than Ethan, bigger than any of us. Go. Grace fired again at Reed's position. Go now. Martha looked at Ethan, at his pale face, at the blood soaking through his shirt, at the paper in her hand with an address written in shaky letters, at Grace standing over them both, protecting them with her rifle and her fury. She thought of Catherine, of Sarah, of all the girls in the ledger, all the lives Reed and Blackwood had destroyed. She ran. Behind her the gunfight raged on. Martha ran through alleys, through backyards, her lungs burning, the paper clutched in her fist. Grace's horse was behind the café. Martha untied it with shaking hands and hauled herself into the saddle. The ride to Eleanor's orphanage took 20 minutes that felt like hours. Martha kept expecting bullets, kept expecting Reed to appear out of the darkness. But the night stayed quiet, except for the sounds of chaos fading behind her. Eleanor's orphanage was a converted farmhouse surrounded by open fields. Lights blazed in every window. As Martha rode up, Eleanor ran out, her face white with fear. Martha, what happened? We heard shots. Reed's here. He attacked the café. Ethan's shot. Martha slid off the horse, nearly falling. We need help. We need... She stopped. Because coming out of the orphanage behind Eleanor were Sheriff Davis Tom Baker in handcuffs, and a man Martha had never seen before wearing a federal marshal's badge. Miss Sawyer, the marshal stepped forward. I'm Marshal William Garrett, no relation to the outlaw before you ask. James Crawford reached me 3 hours ago with your sister's ledger. I've been reading it, and I think you and I need to have a very long conversation about Reed Montgomery and Frank Blackwood. Martha's knees gave out. She sat down hard in the dirt, tears streaming down her face. The marshal was here. Crawford had made it. The evidence was safe. They'd done it. Against all odds, they'd actually done it. There's more, Martha gasped out. Blackwood has a place where he keeps the girls. Ethan found it. He gave me... She held out the paper with shaking hands. The marshal took it, read it, and his face went hard as stone. That's the old Blackwood mining operation in the mountains, abandoned 10 years ago. or so everyone thought. He turned to Sheriff Davis. "How many men can you gather?" "Maybe 20, but it'll take time." "We don't have time." Martha pulled herself to her feet. "Reed knows we have the evidence now. He'll warn Blackwood. They'll move the girls, or—" She couldn't finish the thought. "Or kill them, or worse." "Then we ride tonight," the marshal said. "Sheriff, get your men. Miss Sawyer, you're coming with us. I'll need you to testify to what you know." "I'm coming too." Eleanor's voice was hard. "Some of those girls, I might know them, and they'll need a woman there, someone who understands." The marshal looked like he might argue, then nodded. "Fine, but you do exactly as I say. We're riding into a dangerous situation." "We've been in dangerous situations before," Eleanor said quietly. "We'll manage." They gathered horses and men, 23 riders total, armed and grim-faced. As they mounted up, one of Eleanor's older boys ran out. "Miss Eleanor, there's someone coming up the road. Looks like he's hurt bad." They all turned. A horse was approaching slowly. Its rider slumped in the saddle. As it came closer, Martha's heart stopped. It was Ethan, blood-soaked, barely conscious but alive. He lifted his head as they ran to him. "Sarah," he whispered. "Have to find Sarah." "We're going now," Martha told him, catching him as he slid from the saddle. "We're going to bring her home." Ethan's eyes focused on her face. He tried to smile. "Told you, you'd be fine." Then he passed out. Doc Harrison rushed forward, Eleanor's children, helping carry Ethan inside. Martha stood frozen, watching him disappear into the orphanage, not knowing if she'd see him alive again. "Miss Sawyer." The marshal was mounted, waiting. "We need to move." Martha climbed onto her horse. The paper with Blackwood's location was burned into her memory now. An old mining operation 30 miles into the mountains, where Sarah had been held for 3 years, where other girls were being kept right now waiting to be sold like cattle, where Reed, Montgomery, and Frank Blackwood thought they were untouchable. The riders moved out a silent column heading into the darkness. Martha rode near the front next to the marshal, her gun heavy in her pocket. Catherine's ledger was safe. Crawford had survived his wound. Ethan was being cared for. Now came the hardest part. The confrontation, the reckoning, the ride to save the girls Montgomery and Blackwood had stolen, and to make sure those men never hurt anyone again. Martha touched the gun in her pocket and thought of Catherine's last words. "I'm going to stop him. I'm going to make sure he never hurts another girl." "I'm finishing it," Martha whispered to the night, to her sister's memory. "I'm finishing what you started." And she would. One way or another, before this night ended, she would make Reed Montgomery answer for every crime in that ledger, even if it killed her. The mountains rose black against the star-filled sky as they rode. Martha's hands were numb on the reins, her body aching from exhaustion and fear, but she didn't slow down. Couldn't slow down. Somewhere ahead in that darkness, girls were waiting for rescue. Girls who'd given up hope, who thought no one was coming for them. Girls like Sarah Westlake, who'd been 16 when Blackwood took her 3 years ago. Marshal Garrett rode beside Martha, his face grim in the moonlight. "When we get there, you stay back with Sheriff Davis and the others. I'll go in first with my deputies." "No." Martha's voice was flat. "I'm going in. Those girls will be terrified. They need to see a woman's face, hear a woman's voice telling them it's safe, that they're going home." "Miss Sawyer, this is going to be dangerous." "Everything's been dangerous since Catherine died. I'm not stopping now." The marshal studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Stay close to me. Don't take unnecessary risks. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood." They rode in silence after that. The path grew steeper, narrower, winding between rocks and sparse trees. Martha could smell pine, and cold air, and something else underneath, smoke maybe, or fear. She couldn't tell anymore. Eleanor rode up on her other side. "How are you holding up?" "I don't know. Ask me when this is over." Martha's voice cracked. "Ethan, do you think he'll—" "Doc Harrison's the best there is. If anyone can save him, it's Doc. Eleanor's voice was gentle. Ethan's strong, stubborn. He survived this long searching for Sarah. He's not going to die before he sees her again. Martha wanted to believe that. Had to believe it because the alternative was unbearable. They crested a ridge, and the marshal held up his hand, stopping the column. Below them, hidden in a narrow valley, was the old mining operation. It didn't look abandoned. Light glowed in windows of what must have been the foreman's house. Smoke rose from a chimney. Horses were corralled behind the building, and Martha could see at least 2 men standing guard outside. There, Sheriff Davis whispered. That's Blackwood's operation. That's it. The marshal's voice was tight with controlled anger. He's been hiding in plain sight for years, telling everyone the mine was played out, not worth reopening, all the while using it as a holding facility. How do we approach? One of the deputies asked. If we ride down there, they'll see us coming. We split up. The marshal was already planning, his eyes scanning the terrain. Sheriff Davis, take 10 men around the east side, block their escape route. I'll take the rest straight down the main approach. Make enough noise to draw their attention to us. Give Davis time to get in position. What about me? Martha asked. You come with me, but you stay behind the deputies until we have control of the situation. No heroics. Martha nodded, though she knew she was lying. If it came down to saving those girls or staying safe, there was no question which she'd choose. They moved into position slowly, quietly, letting their horses pick their way down the rocky slope. Martha's heart hammered against her ribs. This was it. The end of everything that started when Catherine died. One way or another, it ended here. The guards spotted them when they were still 50 yards out. One shouted an alarm, the other raised a rifle. The marshal didn't hesitate. Federal Marshal, drop your weapons. The guards didn't drop their weapons. They opened fire. The deputies returned fire, and suddenly the night exploded with gunshots and shouting. Martha's horse reared. She clung to the saddle, fighting to control it as chaos erupted around her. The door to the main building flew open, and men poured out. Martha counted 6, no 7, all armed. From somewhere inside came screaming women's voices, high and terrified. They're going to kill the girls, Eleanor shouted. They're going to kill the witnesses. Martha didn't think. She kicked her horse forward, racing past the deputies, past the marshal's shouted warnings. She had to get to those girls, had to reach them before Blackwood's men did something unforgivable. A bullet whined past her head. Another hit the ground beside her horse's hooves. Martha kept riding, bent low over the saddle, praying she wouldn't be shot before she reached the building. She was almost there when a man stepped into her path, gun raised. Martha recognized him instantly. Frank Blackwood himself, older than she'd expected, with cold eyes and a smile that made her blood run cold. Well now, he said, what do we have here? A little hero come to save the day. Martha yanked on the reins, her horse sliding to a stop. She fumbled for her gun, but Blackwood was faster. He grabbed her arm and dragged her from the saddle. Martha hit the ground hard, the air knocked from her lungs. I know you, Blackwood said, standing over her. You're the Sawyer woman. Reed's been looking for you. Said you had some book that could cause problems. He pressed his gun against her forehead. Looks like your problems just got a lot worse. Martha stared up at him, at the gun, at her own death reflected in his eyes. She thought of Catherine, of Ethan bleeding out at the orphanage, of Sarah somewhere in this building still waiting after 3 years. The marshal has the ledger, Martha said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Copies are already in Denver and Kansas City. The newspapers have it. You're done, Blackwood. It's over. Something flickered in Blackwood's eyes. Fear, maybe, or rage. His finger tightened on the trigger. Then Eleanor's wagon came crashing through the fence horses, screaming, wood splintering. Blackwood turned startled, and Martha drove her knee into his groin with every ounce of strength she had left. He doubled over, gasping. Martha scrambled away, grabbing for her gun. Martha down. The marshal's voice. Martha threw herself flat. Gunfire erupted above her. When she looked up, Blackwood was on the ground, blood spreading across his chest, staring sightlessly at the sky. Inside, Martha screamed. The girls are inside. She ran for the door. Behind her, the marshal and his deputies were securing the remaining men, but Martha couldn't wait. Those screams were getting louder, more desperate. The inside of the building was dim and stank of unwashed bodies and fear. Martha stumbled through a narrow hallway following the sounds of crying. She reached a heavy door locked from the outside. She shot the lock off. Ethan would be proud of her aim and kicked the door open. The room beyond was small and windowless. 10 girls huddled inside, ages ranging from maybe 14 to 20. They cringed away from the door from Martha, too terrified to recognize rescue. It's all right, Martha said, her voice shaking. I'm here to help. The marshal's here. You're safe now. You're all safe. One of the girls, blonde and painfully thin, stepped forward. You're lying. They always lie. They say we're going somewhere better and then it's worse. I'm not lying. I promise you I'm not. Martha's voice broke. My name is Martha Sawyer. My sister Catherine was gathering evidence against the men who did this to you. She was killed for it. But we have that evidence now. We're shutting this down, all of it. The blonde girl stared at her. Then slowly she started to cry. Catherine Montgomery. She said she'd help us. She said she wouldn't forget. Martha's heart clenched. You knew, Catherine. She came to the house where I was being held. In St. Louis. She was pretending to be a buyer, but she wasn't. She asked us questions, wrote down our names. The girl's voice broke. She said she'd come back for us, but then she was gone, and we heard she'd died, and we thought no one was coming. Ever. I came. Martha reached out and took the girl's hands. Catherine sent me. She made me promise to finish what she started, and I will, starting right now. She turned to the other girls. Come on, all of you. We're getting you out of here. They moved slowly, afraid to believe, afraid to hope. Martha led them down the hallway into the night where the marshal and his men had secured the area. Eleanor was already there with blankets and water wrapping the girls in warmth and safety. Is this all of them? The marshal asked Martha. 10 girls. I think so, but we should search the rest of the building to be sure. They found 2 more locked rooms. One held supplies, food, blankets, chains. The other held 3 more girls, younger than the rest, barely teenagers. And in the very back, locked in what must have once been a root cellar, they found Sarah Westlake. She was curled in a corner, her hair matted, her dress torn, her eyes hollow with trauma and lost hope. When Martha knelt beside her, Sarah didn't even look up. Sarah, Martha said softly. Sarah Westlake, your brother Ethan sent me. He's been looking for you for 3 years. He never stopped. He never gave up. Sarah's head lifted slowly. Ethan, her voice was barely a whisper. My brother Ethan. Yes, he's waiting for you. He's hurt, but he's alive, and he's waiting for you to come home. Sarah began to shake, then to sob. Martha gathered her close, holding her, while 3 years of captivity and pain poured out. Eleanor appeared with a blanket and wrapped it around Sarah's shoulders, her own tears falling freely. You're safe now, Martha whispered. You're going home. They brought all 13 girls out into the night air. The marshal's men had rounded up Blackwood's associates, 8 men total, all in chains, now all facing federal trafficking charges. Martha stood among the rescued girls and felt something shift inside her chest. Not relief exactly, not closure, but something like peace. Catherine's promise had been kept. The girls had been found. The monsters who'd taken them were in custody. It wasn't everything. It would never be everything, but it was something. Miss Sawyer, the marshal approached her, his face serious. Reed Montgomery wasn't here, neither was his man Garrett. They must have stayed in Silver Bend. Martha's moment of peace shattered. Then we need to go back. If Reed's still there. Sheriff Davis already sent riders back with word. Grace and the others know to barricade themselves in until we return. The marshal paused. But Montgomery's dangerous and he's cornered. This is going to end badly for someone. Then let's make sure it ends badly for him and not for my friends. Martha's voice was hard. How fast can we ride? They left half the deputies to guard the prisoners and escort the girls to safety. The rest rode back toward Silver Bend at a pace that would have been reckless in daylight and was nearly suicidal at night. Martha pushed her horse harder than she should have, driven by images of Reed setting fire to the café, of Grace and Sophia, and everyone who'd helped her burning because Martha had brought this war to their doorstep. Dawn was breaking as they crested the final ridge overlooking Silver Bend. Smoke rose from the center of town. Martha's heart stopped. "The café," she gasped. "Oh God, the café's on fire." They thundered down into town. People were in the streets, bucket brigades trying to fight the flames. Martha saw Grace directing them, her face covered in soot, her voice hoarse from shouting orders. "Where's Montgomery?" Martha yelled as she dismounted. "Gone." Grace's voice was bitter. "Bastard set the fire and ran. Took Garrett and his remaining men and headed south, probably trying to make it to Mexico." "Anyone hurt?" "Few burns, nothing serious. We got everyone out before the fire spread." Grace grabbed Martha's shoulders. "Ethan woke up. He's asking for you and Sarah." "Sarah's safe. She's coming with the others." Martha looked at the burning café, at Grace's life work going up in flames. "Grace, I'm so sorry. This is my fault, all of it." "Stop that!" Grace's grip tightened. "Bait. This is Reed Montgomery's fault. Frank Blackwood's fault, not yours. Never yours." She looked past Martha to where Eleanor was riding in with Sarah. "Is that really her? After 3 years? It's really her." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Then it was worth it. The café can be rebuilt. Sarah's life can't be. Go on. Get to Ethan before he does something stupid, like trying to come to you." Martha ran to the doctor's office where they'd taken Ethan. She burst through the door to find him sitting up in bed, pale and bandaged, but alive. His eyes found hers immediately. "Sarah," he asked. Just the one word, but it contained everything. "Outside, she's coming." Ethan tried to stand. Doc Harrison pushed him back down. "You'll tear those stitches and bleed out. Let her come to you, you stubborn fool." Eleanor appeared in the doorway with Sarah. For a moment, brother and sister just stared at each other. 3 years stretched between them, 3 years. Years of trauma and searching and lost hope. Then Sarah whispered Ethan, and he was up. Doc Harrison's protests be damned, gathering his sister into his arms and holding her like he'd never let go. Martha backed out of the room, giving them privacy. In the street, the fire was finally under control. The café was gone, burned to its foundation, but the buildings on either side had been saved. People were gathering, talking in low voices, looking at Martha with expressions ranging from gratitude to suspicion to fear. The marshal rode up beside her. "Montgomery's trail leads south. We'll pursue, but he's got a head start. Might take weeks to track him down." "He won't make it to Mexico," Martha said with absolute certainty. "He's too arrogant. He thinks he can buy his way out of this. He'll stop somewhere, try to call in favors, use his connections, and that's when you'll catch him." "You sound very sure." "I lived with him for 2 years after he married my sister. I know how he thinks. He doesn't believe he can really lose. That arrogance is his weakness." The marshal nodded slowly. "Well, even if he does make it out of the country, the evidence stands. Catherine's ledger names dozens of accomplices. We'll be making arrests for months. The trafficking ring she exposed, it's bigger than we thought. Connections in 5 states, contacts overseas. Your sister uncovered something massive. Then make sure everyone knows it. Make sure Catherine Montgomery's name is attached to every arrest, every conviction, every girl who gets saved because of what she found." Martha's voice was fierce. "Make sure her death meant something." "I will. You have my word." The marshal tipped his hat. "You're a brave woman, Miss Sawyer. Your sister would be proud." He rode off to organize the pursuit. Martha stood alone in the street watching Silver Bend slowly return to life around her. The sun was rising now, painting the mountains gold and pink. A new day, a new beginning. "Martha." Sophia appeared at her elbow, soot-stained but smiling. Grace wants to know if you're still willing to work as a cook. She's planning to rebuild the café. Says she'll need help. Martha looked at Sophia, at Grace directing the cleanup, at Eleanor emerging from the doctor's office with tears of joy on her face, at all the people who'd become her family in the space of 3 weeks. "Tell Grace I'm not going anywhere," Martha said. "Silver Bend is my home now." 3 months later, Reed Montgomery was caught trying to bribe a customs official in El Paso. He was brought back to Kansas City in chains, tried for Catherine's murder and for conspiracy to traffic minors, and sentenced to hang. Martha testified at his trial. She looked him in the eyes as she described finding Catherine's body, running with the ledger, watching her sister's careful investigation bring down his entire operation. Reed's last words before the trapdoor opened were, "You've destroyed me." Martha's response, loud enough for the whole courtroom to hear, was, "Good." She didn't stay for the execution. She took the train back to Silver Bend, back to the rebuilt café where Grace had saved her a position as head cook, back to Sophia's dress shop where she spent her afternoons sewing and laughing with the other women, back to Eleanor's orphanage where some of the rescued girls were learning to heal and build new lives, back to Ethan, who was still recovering but getting stronger every day, back to Sarah, who was learning to smile again. The first night Martha was back, Ethan found her on the café's new back porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains red and gold. He sat down beside her, moving carefully, his shoulder still healing. "Grace says you're staying," he said. "Grace is right. I'm glad." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Sarah asked me today when I'm going to ask you to marry me. I told her I was waiting for the right time." Martha's heart skipped. "And is this the right time?" "Maybe, maybe not, but I'm asking anyway." He turned to look at her, his dark eyes serious. "Martha Sawyer, will you marry me someday soon when we've both healed a little more, when this town finishes rebuilding and when Sarah's strong enough to stand beside you? Will you marry me then?" Martha thought of Catherine, who'd died trying to save girls she'd never met, of Sarah, who'd survived 3 years of hell and was learning to live again, of Grace and Sophia and Eleanor, who'd built a network of safety in a brutal world, of all the women whose names filled Catherine's ledger, who were being freed even now because one woman had refused to stay silent. She thought of the girl she'd been 3 months ago, running scared with nothing but a book of evidence and a prayer, and the woman she was now, who'd found her strength, her purpose, her place in the world. "Yes," she said. "Someday soon I'll marry you." Ethan smiled, really smiled the first time she'd seen it, and took her hand. They sat together as the sun finished setting, as Silver Bend settled into peaceful evening, as the stars began to appear one by one in the darkening sky. Martha had come to this town as a fugitive, seeking nothing more than survival. She'd found something so much better. She'd found family, purpose, justice, love. She'd found home. And on a golden evening under the frontier stars, surrounded by people who'd chosen to protect rather than harm, to stand rather than run, to fight rather than accept the world as it was, Martha Sawyer finally let herself believe in tomorrow. Catherine's promise had been kept. The monsters had been stopped. The girls had been saved. And out of tragedy and violence and fear, something beautiful had grown, a community of survivors who'd transformed their pain into protection, their grief into grace, their brokenness into unshakable strength. Silver Bend had become a place where wounded souls could heal, where hunted women could find sanctuary, where justice wasn't just a word but a daily practice of courage and compassion. Martha had run from death and found life founded in the last place she'd expected, among people she'd never planned to meet, fighting a war she'd never meant to join. But she wouldn't change a single moment of it, because every struggle, every fear, every desperate choice had led her here to this porch, this man, this town, this family she'd built from strangers and desperation and stubborn refusal to let evil win. Catherine would be proud, Martha thought, as Ethan squeezed her hand. Proud of what her death had accomplished, proud of the lives saved. because she'd had the courage to investigate men no one else would challenge. And Martha would spend the rest of her life honoring that courage by helping Grace rebuild, by teaching other women to fight back, by making sure Silver Bend remained a place where the powerless could find power and the voiceless could finally be heard. The frontier was harsh and unforgiving, but it was also a place where new lives could be born from the ashes of old ones, where broken people could become whole again, where a seamstress turned cook could become a warrior for justice without ever picking up anything heavier than a ledger and a gun. Martha Sawyer had arrived at the frontier seeking work and found a war worth fighting, a cause worth dying for, and a life worth living, and she would never run again.